In this lesson, I want to talk about a very important concept in software design that is unfortunately foreign to a lot of developers. Think of a remote control. A remote control has a bunch of buttons on the outside and a complex electronic board on the inside. What is inside of a remote control is not relevant to us. We don't want to understand how it works. All we need are those buttons that allow us to control our TV, right? Now, what is interesting is that changes in the internals of a remote control do not impact us. So if the newer model has a different kind of electronic board on the inside, we can still use it like the older model. It still has a button for turning the TV on or off. In software, our modules or components should follow the same principle. They should not expose their internals because if the internals get changed, other modules might be affected. Here's a real example. I've created this module, and in this module, we're exporting this function, turn on. In the body of this function, we're calling two functions, send signal A and send signal B. And then we say our TV is on. And here are those two functions. As you can see, we're exporting all these functions. Now, if we go to index.js and try to import a function from this module, I'll put that in a store folder. Look at what we get. We get three functions, send signal A, send signal B, and turn on. We should not be able to directly call these two functions because these are the internals of our imaginary remote control. So if we import send signal A and try to call it over here, and then sometime in the future, we decide to add a couple of parameters here, then we need to go back to everywhere we have used this function, like over here, and pass two arguments. This is what we call tightly coupled software. So when you change something in one module, you'll end up with a lot of breaking changes in other modules. Now, the remote control principle tells us that we should not export the internals of this module. These are implementation detail, and they can change in the future. So if we remove the export keyword and then go to index.js, see what we get when we try to import something from this module. The only function we get is the turn on function. This is good software design. We can call the turn on function here. Now, if in the future we make any changes in this module, our index module is not going to be affected. For example, let's say we decide to remove this function. We don't need it anymore. Now, everything is working as before, and our index module is not affected because here we are not touching the internals of this other module, okay? Now, let's say this principle in the context of a Redux application. So here in the bug slice, we're exporting these actions that have the notion of events. Now, if you pay close attention to the code in this module, you realize that we're only using these actions inside this module. In other words, in our UI layer, we should never directly dispatch this action, bug added, because this will only update the store. It's not going to save the data to the server. So in our UI layer, we should dispatch the actions that have the notion of commands, like add bug, okay? The only place where we have used this action is over here, where we set the unsuccess property of this object. So the bug added action is an implementation detail. It should be internal in this module. It should not be exported to the outside. Now, with this implementation, if we go to index.js and try to import something from the bug slice, look at what we get. We get all these actions. There's so much happening here. With this, we can easily import this action and accidentally dispatch it. This will only update the Redux store. It's not going to save the data to the server. Now, back to the bug slice. What happens if we don't export these actions? Now, back in index.js, if we try to import something from this module, we only see these few functions: add bug, assign bug to user, get bugs by user, and so on. So we have a bunch of actions that have the notion of commands and a bunch of selectors or queries. This is the proper way to design a module. By applying the remote control principle, we have reduced the coupling in our system. So other modules cannot use the internals of the bugs module.